And so this Minotaur, right? This half bull, half man. Um, one of the interesting things is by perception, right? What makes it an ugly creature? Um, is it the fact that it's uncommon? Is it the fact that it's something not of the normal world, so to speak? Uh, Borges seems to be. You see, he's very philosophical about it. It's kind of existential. By appearance, what makes it true? Of course, in the traditional one, right? I know I'm pushing to extremes here, but granted, if you're eating a human, right, uh, then yeah, you're not a very good creature, so to speak. Uh, but Borges retells this story, and he says there's almost, by interpretive sense, are how judgmental are we when we perceive and judge, right? We're so quick to judge by perception. We're even quick to judge by what we hear and what we listen to. Um, we're not very. I'm generalizing. I'm talking about me personally, maybe in a sense, right? Certainly not you, but I'm talking about by example of the sense. But uh, personally, yeah, things that are probably non-traditional uh, are generally wrongfully judged by me. Say, oh gosh, well that's not part of the norm. That's got to be wrong, or that's got to be questionable. And then I take a deep breath and hopefully, it's not always the case, but hopefully I'll tell myself, hey, come on, um, don't be so quick to judge. Right? There's many possibilities, being slightly postmodernist. Right? Uh, so the House of Assyrian is really interesting because not only does he redefine the classical slash modern agenda, but he's retelling the story of, here's the labyrinth. And the modern sense, the labyrinth is generally, it's encapsulated. It's like there's no escape from it. So in classical times, what's that? The labyrinth is the mythological labyrinth. In modern times, it's the labyrinth of Christianity. What's the labyrinth of today? And when you think of the postmodern agenda, you think, well, gosh, there's, I don't know how many beliefs are out there, but the beliefs that are present out there are almost infinite. And so by measure of it, this notion of infinity, it's like when he had Asterion saying that here's the labyrinth in and of itself is his universe. When you think about our universe and we look up there and we're trying to understand the magnitude of infinity that's out there, uh, what's the truth? And is it wrong for me to be Christian? Is it wrong for me to be Mormon? Is it wrong for me to be uh, Wiccan, or for me to be agnostic or Muslim, what have you? Um, and if I do say it's wrong, why is it wrong, right? It's kind of like this agenda that anything goes. And instead of the labyrinth being encapsulating, which is the way it was in classical times and the way it was in modern times, it's just kind of like this encapsulation of sorts. In the postmodern era, uh, um, very much this labyrinth, so to speak, is it's just a way of saying, look, there's a gazillion different pathways we can take, and rather than it narrowing and boxing us in and oppressing us, that's not the case at all. Instead, it's uh, magnanimously opening, I don't know how many possible corridors. And when you think of the possibility, this idea of I don't know how many possibilities, it's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it, right? Now, granted, as I mentioned before, it's not to say there's not without it's not without its critiques, right? If why? Because how do we bring about unity? We can't just be a world of fragmented individuals. Yeah, I understand that postmodernity was responding back to those terrible modernist agendas, warfare, Aryan white race. And to a certain extent, that the Holocaust is type of modernist. Hitler comes out and says, "Hey, the one race that's going to save the world is the Aryan white race," right? Very modernist. So, so the battle against it is very much one that's saying, "Hey, no, it's not. You're not right about this, right?" Today with same-sex marriage, with the multiplicity of theological beliefs in religion, or no theological beliefs in religion, uh, that's very postmodernist too. Okay? So I hope this helps you, right? It's just postmodernity is this response to kind of the bad stuff of modernity. Now, today, a lot of people are kind of trying to bring, it's kind of like um, a postmodernity, because it's kind of like a response to um, a reply to saying, "Hey, okay, come on, we're overly individualizing our world, so let's shift things around." Okay. All right. Well, to finalize, let me talk about your research paper. So, I'll give an example of maybe this essay here. Let's say I'm writing an essay on House of Assyrian by Borges. I certainly got to have an introduction, and 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 my introduction has to have a thesis. I have to have and I have to make an argument about it, right? And if you think about the postmodern context, this is an argument that's going to be arguable, or should be arguable. I'm interpreting House of Assyrian from my own perspective. This is the label that I'm giving it, the thematic label that I'm giving it, and then I have to prove it. So you have to have an introduction. You got to have a thesis statement. Here's a possible thesis statement for House of Assyrian. I could say something like, you remember, you have to tag it, title, author, genre, right? The short story House of Assyrian by Jorge Luis Borges uh, seems to provide the message that redemption and freedom, redemption and freedom comes about in the internal sense and not necessarily in the external physical sense, period. So when we think, so a validation for it, maybe I'm discussing this in my introduction. So if I'm saying um, that I'm going to be free by escape, when you think of a post-colonial slavery, those slaves, the idea of freedom for them was escaping the plantation, escaping the oppressive, plantation owner, so to speak. Uh, Borges himself, hey, it doesn't happen externally; it happens internally. As a matter of fact, the freedom in this case for Asterion was allowing himself to be killed by Theseus. I was kind of rooting for him. Don't let yourself be killed, so to speak. But that's the end in Borges' story is that sometimes many of our overwhelming burdens and um, capturing, um, um, I guess, weights, right? The burden on our shoulders. It's more of an internal thing. It's not external. We can't. There's some things about the external world we can't control, but we can control our insides. So that's one way to perceive it. Then I could give a background. You notice here on the subheadings here, uh, a highlight that after my introduction, I have a background. I could ask what leads Borges to write such a story, or what inspired him. Again, if you're writing a postmodern story, you've got to say it's a response to modernity. And maybe Borges simply was getting to the fact that, hey, we're in a world where we're starting to see the undoing on a lot of previous ideas that are just simply not true. So why not open up these doors of the possibility of multiplicity? And in doing so, what is it that happens? Well, what is it that happens is um, you do open up another can of worms. You say, oh gosh, well there's this idea and this idea, this gosh, there's all these too many possibilities. But Borges is kind of promoting that. Let me support it. Well, the analysis could be the idea of irony, right? The symbol of the labyrinth in and of itself, and the labyrinth is generally thought of as like a jail. Let's put a Styrian in there, Theseus used to say, or Minos used to say, so that the monster doesn't escape. But whereas Borges, in the ironic tone of things and symbolic sense of things, and the juxtapose, the word, another word is antithesis. It's the other words I'm coming out with, the analytical literary terms I'm coming out with, is that this labyrinth in the antithesis sense, juxtapose, contradictory, symbolic sense, rather than being an encapsulating jail, is actually a freeing, a freeing entity, right? A freeing landscape. I'm so free that I can go here and there and there. I'm not oppressed by this black and white agenda, so to speak. Right? So, intro with my thesis, provide a background of the author, maybe what inspired him, things of the sort. You can do a little bit of historical background of the author as well. And the analysis, you analyze the story. How are we supporting the argument? The argument that redemption and freedom is more internal than external, right? Well, the perception, right? The perception of the labyrinth is rather than make it something oppressive, let me make it something because and ultimately what sport is getting at the idea of things. Can somebody can somebody enslave an idea? Well, no, they can enslave the physical self, but the idea is unanimously free. Somebody can try to manipulate my ideas, but the idea is generally the beauty of the idea is that the idea is beautifully free. Uh, Afterwards, you get your conclusion. And your conclusion, you're kind of just echoing the main ideas. Now, on the analysis, this is where you did your literary your annotated bibliographies, your 8 sources, 6 or 8 sources. Is you're going to also include. You're going to do like a comparison, and you're going to say, okay, look, this author here says this about. This is what he says that the argument is, and this is what this author says, and there might be an author there. I'm hoping this is the case that you're going to agree with an author. You're going to say, oh, look at this author. I agree with Weinstein and Chavez. Right? Or let me not use Weinstein; it's got a bad rep. Um, Sanchez and Lopez. Right? Let's make it cultural, right? Sanchez and Lopez argue that blank. Parallels my argument in the sense that and you provide the commentary to the author, and you provide your commentary, right? But don't forget to include those in your analysis, anyways. The sources, those bibliography sources, bring it in. What did those authors say? It's a lengthy research paper, so you got to make sure and it is a research paper, so you've got to use those sources as well. So by the time you get to your conclusion, you re-echo in the very brief sense, pretty much a synopsis of the argument, and you also offer a type of how does this paper, in what way is it beneficial to today? You're offering like a type of a mirror for contemporary society. Why should people bother reading it? And so offer a sense of like resolution or a sense of something good that you're going to provide through by means of this article. And then provide your sources. You don't need to provide the annotations anymore. Provide the sources, and voila, you've got your research paper. You can also view the resources on the left on Blackboard. It says writing how to write a research paper there, right? Literary research paper. View those resources. Send me questions, and I hope I helped. So we did an overview on postmodernity. Hope this helps, and I gave you an overview on certainly the composition of the research paper. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well, and we'll see you soon.